Hello and welcome to the Turned On podcast. I'm Angelique Norrie, and my husband David and I have made it our mission to break the darkness by flipping the switch on the four most important areas of your life: in health, relationships, business, and in faith. And sometimes the light in the world and in your life can go dim, either from the intrusion of technology or simply because society is so driven by instant gratification. It's our mission to help people see that we're hardwired for connection and that the best things in life come when we turn on the light to see with new eyes the opportunity that exists just a flip away. So if you're ready to stir your spirit, open your eyes, and profit in all areas of your life, then let's get turned on. Here we go.
Oh, we're back in our home studios here, Cole Media in Tampa. Love being here in the studio. Shout out to my man Tyler running the show. We're got a good one for you today. But first, I got to have an agreement with you guys. I want you to do me a favor. Everybody listening, could you do me a favor? Look down right now. Just look down. And do me a favor, I just want to make sure that you guys have your big boy and your big girl pants on right now, okay? Everybody, pull up your big boy pants, pull up your big girl pants. This is a show that might not be politically correct, okay? We're going to talk about some things that people don't feel comfortable talking about, but we're not going to do it because we want to stir the pot. We're not going to do it because we want to point fingers. We want to do it. And we have to drop the political correctness because there's an epidemic going on that nobody's talking about. There's something that has continually been swept underneath the carpet, and it's the elephant in the room that people don't want to talk about. Okay, now, here's the thing. Let's go back, and I'm going to give you this story with no embellishment. And I'm going to give it to you as real as I can. And it's going to start off a conversation that you're going to want to hear and be a part of. Now, a couple weeks ago, Angelique and I were on a family road trip, and we go to a place called Dollywood. It's in Tennessee. It's in Gatlinburg. And gosh, I love Dollywood. It's a great place, great theme park, Dolly Parton's theme park, great roller coasters, just clean as a whistle. It's fantastic. But Gatlinburg, Tennessee, my friends, forgive me. Probably hands down, and I've been a lot of places, the most unhealthy city that I've ever seen in my life. Now, it's mostly tourists, but, and I'm, again, please understand, I am not saying this to be mean, but I went to Dollywood and I was shocked. My jaw was dropped. I couldn't believe the prevalence of obesity that I saw. We're going to talk about this today. And it's not going to be fun at times, but it has to be said. And I'm not just talking about a little bit. I'm not just, these people are out of shape. Look, I'm not here to talk to anybody who's a little bit, battling the waistline. I'm talking about kids that I was seeing. 6, 8, 13, 15. Unbelievable. And not just a couple. It was prevalent. Okay? It was prevalent. And I'm like, right now, 100%, this is wrong. And I can't say it strong enough, we as a country, as a people, if we don't do this, it is child abuse. The same way you would not like to see a 6-year-old sitting on the corner smoking a cigarette. How can we look at these children and they have no prospect of a future? None. And that is not hyperbole. When I tell you it was shocking, I'm talking about shocking. And And look, this was a glaring example. It's not a healthy place. I'm just going to say that. But this is something going on across the country and the world. And I have the statistics to prove it. But we're going to use common sense today. What we see is an obesity epidemic that if we don't start to really get our minds around it and we don't really start to look at this as an issue of life and death, both for physical and economical, we're going to talk about that too, we're looking at the downfall of humanity. It's that serious. I can't stress it enough. So I'll give you some numbers. I'll give you some examples. I'm going to have an expert, okay? Here's just some quick numbers. First of all, I always like to use our common sense. You guys go out, go to Target, go to your stores, look at people. We have changed our physiology as a people and a culture. But let's just go a couple quick examples. Here's 2021 statistics from the World Health Organization, okay? Worldwide obesity has nearly tripled since 1975. Tripled worldwide obesity. Here's the thing. The children, remember we just talked about? 39 million children under the age of 5 were overweight or obese last year. 39 million children under the age of 5 were overweight or obese. That's staggering. Here's another staggering statistic. This one really floored me. I got to set it up here, guys. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to get somewhere today. But if I don't set you up, and look, you don't have to look hard for staggering statistics. They're out there. This is not a reach. Here's the Harvard School of Public Health. Says about half of the U.S. adult population will be obese by 2030. Half of the population. About a quarter will be severely obese by 2030. What does that mean? Severely obese is someone who is more than 100 pounds over a healthy body weight. 100 pounds. Hold on a second. If you're driving or walking, you're like, wait, what? I'm going to say it again. I'm going to slow it down. And I need you to wrap your mind around this in order for us to really be slapped in the face and say, you know what? All those other things that are going on right now, this is right up there with the most crucial things that we need to tackle. Half of the population of the United States of America will be obese by the year 2030. That's 9 years away. Half of us will be obese. A quarter of us will be 100 pounds overweight. Let that sink in. It is staggering. This is a Harvard School of Public Health study. Okay? That's crazy. 40% of Americans right now are obese, 18% severely obese. There you go. We're right there. We're eating ourselves right out of existence. We see it in the children's movie WALL-E, if you've seen that. It's basically a look into our future. We have they can't even get out of their chairs. They just watch TV and drink soft drinks and eat food all day. So this is the thing nobody wants to talk about. We're not allowed to body shame people. We're actually getting worse at it, and we're going to point that out today. Here's the economic repercussions. An estimated annual healthcare cost of obesity-related illness is $190 billion. At this level, within the next 10 years, it's going to reach $550 billion. $550 billion. And for those of you out there that are not, and you're like, well, that doesn't affect me. Guess what? It does, because you pay insurance, don't you? You pay insurance. When I was looking at these kids in Dollywood, and I'm looking at a kid who's 15 or 10, whatever they may be, give or take 5 years, and they're 100 pounds overweight or close to it or severely obese, I'm thinking, at what point is this person going to work? How long are they going to work? How long before their knees give out? How long before they're diabetics, if they're not already? What's that going to cost? Wow. And if we needed any more reason, how about a pandemic? How about a pandemic to let us know that, hey, you know what? It's time. The first published analysis came out in August, okay? Get this. Peer-reviewed papers, 400,000 patients. They found that people with obesity who got COVID were 113% more likely than healthy people to land in the hospital. 113%. I don't even know how do you get 113%? 74% of people who were obese were more likely to be admitted to the ICU. And half of the people who will get COVID who are obese are more likely to die. So there's so many places we can point fingers, and we're going to point some fingers today because we need to, but we also need to find solutions, and that's why I'm about to bring on an expert. Just give me one more second here. Okay. The Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, March 2021, recently found that more than 80% of patients diagnosed with COVID-19 were also vitamin D deficient. So not only are we're not eating right and we're obese, but we're deficient in so many things that could be saving our lives. What does vitamin D do? It just helps with infections in your immune system. It helps prevent pneumonia and blood clots. That would seem like a good start. And here's one more observation, because sometimes we can hear statistics and they don't mean much, or they sound good, but I like to use my eyes. And one of the things, I don't know, it's kind of weird that we've been doing in this crazy world right now. We want to escape. So me and my family, we've been on this little Love Boat binge. You know the show back in the 80s, The Love Boat? We watch it because everybody starts off and there's, conflict, and there's people who want to be in love or getting divorced, and by the end, everybody's in love again, and it's good. It's a good feeling. So Love Boat has been the Nori family prescription for getting through this pandemic. We watch it every night, typically, reruns. But here's the glaring thing. As I'm watching the scenes by the pool in the Love Boat, this is 1982, and I'm like, I can't believe how thin people were. And I'm talking about just in general. I'm not talking about the young models on the show. I'm like the older people, everybody, the men have like 30-inch waists, but you can tell there's something physically different. It's not just I think it's got to be what's going into the food. When I'm talking like hormones, GMOs, and all the other crap, because there shouldn't be that much of a difference in the human physiology in that amount of time. It's not like we're talking like, from the Stone Age to now. It's only been a couple of decades. And the men on the show are just thin. Everybody's thin. The women on the show are thin. And so it's a glaring kind of slap in the face to where we've come. What are we going to do about it? Who's going to give us answers? Who's going to hold us responsible? People are dying right now. And I have to be really, really, I don't want to say careful. People are dying. I mean, if you're overweight and you get COVID, you have a 50% more likely chance to die. We're seeing it. It's costing us incredible amounts of money in our economy that we could be spending on different things like education and all these other things, but we're spending it on healthcare. Why? And what can we do about it? We feel helpless. Well, I have a friend that's coming on right now who's dedicated his entire life to figuring this out it's not a diet perspective, it's an eating perspective, and that's what's going to be different. We're done with diets. How are we as a culture not eating right? And what are we going to do about this? My friend, please welcome Will Armillo, founder of the Nourish System. And he's our special guest. Will, you've heard me talking about this. You and I have went back and forth several times. You've been on our show before. What about what I just said really, really gets to you?
David, first and foremost, thank you for having me on. And just listening to talk past 15 minutes, even that's shocking. Like, if you're listening to this and you're not shocked, something's wrong with you. Like, I know these things because I live this world, but when I hear somebody like David lay it out the way he's right, why is this not on the front page? Why is this not scrolling across the news channels that we're watching? Why is there not a ticker on the news talking about these numbers? Because it's astonishing. And as David said, this is my life. This is what I was put here, I believe, to help, to support, and to come up with some type of solution to help change the trajectory of where we're going. So I'm fired up. So David, you tell me where you want me to hop in, where you want me to dive in, and we will crush this right now.
Well, first of all, tell us a little about you growing up. I think it's important to know because we're going to talk about what it's like to be overweight, and we're going to talk about what we need to do about it, and we're going to say some uncomfortable things, but I need you to tell me a little about how you grew up, just so we know that you're not just someone that got into this, but you lived it.
Yeah, so I'll make this short for you guys, but I think to David's point, the context behind it is important. So as I was growing up, I grew up in a small town in New Mexico. I was an only child till I was about 13, 14-ish. And what's important to know is my dad worked full-time as a fireman, and my mom worked full-time. So when my dad was working, just being me and my mom, I grew up eating a lot of fast food, a lot of it. And if it wasn't fast food, it was Mexican food. So I have vivid memories of my grandma scooping lard out of a Crisco industrial-sized tin to make tortillas. So, but outside of that, when I would go to McDonald's or Sonic or whatever, just to give you what I was ordering. I mean, I was ordering family-sized nuggets, super-sized everything. I would get 10 cheeseburgers in an order. And I in no fault to my parents at all. It is not their fault. They did not grow up overweight. They were never overweight. But they grew up on a different style of eating. I don't think anybody could have prepared for what we now know this type of eating causes and wreaks havoc in the body. So as I was growing up, I grew up pretty overweight as a kid. And the turning point for me was there became a time in my life where I wanted to pursue baseball professionally. And it was also that time in my life where I wanted girls to like me. So I knew that in order to accomplish both, I would need to lose weight. I was overweight. I needed to lose weight. So in secrecy, without telling anybody, I started running in the morning and I started dieting. And the very first diet I ever did at that period in time, was the Atkins diet. I went on the Atkins diet. I used to save my movie money to go to GNC. That was the only supplement store. And I would buy chocolate protein because when I would read through the magazines, when people actually looked at magazines, I would look at all these bodybuilder guys, all these athletes, and they have these magnificent sculpted bodies. And they all said, I drink protein, I eat chicken, I do this. So me being a kid, I was a victim to not only the marketing side of supplementation, but I was also just a victim to the diet culture. And from that age, probably 12, from that age on, I became obsessed with diets, nutrition, and exercise, all the way to the point where when I was in college, that's all I did. Like even strength and conditioning coaches, people would ask me for diet plans. I had so much experience. I had done every diet, every supplement. So fast forward to today, my whole life has been dedicated to diets don't work. What is the actual solution? And why do I just see smoke and mirrors in the health and wellness industry? And how can we get to the root cause of all this and really help people on a mass scale?
Okay, so this sets it up. So here's one thing that I noticed. You talked about being influenced as a adolescent or young adult, let's call it. Somewhere we form our identities, really form our identities sometime between the ages of 8 and 18, okay? So if we look at what culture, the cultural influence, which you just mentioned, again, let's use our common sense. I watch football. On football, when you see on Sundays or Saturdays, college football, and you see commercials, these commercials are overwhelming and predominantly for cheap fast food. And here's what every commercial kind of looks like. 4 young guys sitting in a house watching TV, chowing on hot dogs, burritos, pizza, whatever it be. And now you don't even have to get up. We'll just deliver this cheap food right to you. Like when I see Burger King, you can get a Whopper delivered to your door. Where's the profit margin? In other words, I mean, how cheap does that burger and that meat have to be in order for somebody to bring it to your door if it's $1 something or $4 or whatever it may be? So we see that football mentality where they're targeting young men. And let's face it, there's a lot of young men that are overweight and obese right now. So that's one part. Then let's go and let's look where else. Hey, young ladies, women, have you been to Target lately? Have you looked? When I go in Target, the first section there is the young woman section. You walk in and it's usually right to the left. And there is huge murals now, pictures of what we would call overweight and dare I say, severely obese. Here's the thing. I don't know. I haven't weighed them, and I'm not trying to get into this. But if you have a woman up there and she's in her bra and underwear, okay, I get it. We don't want to shame people's bodies. We want to be inclusive. But at what point are we telling these girls that it's okay and it's healthy? And let me give you some perspective. I grew up in the 80s. There was a model named Twiggy, okay, for some perspective. Her name was Twiggy, and then there was Kate Moss. And these women wore just the opposite. They looked anorexic. They looked sick. You could see the bones in their chests and their shoulder blades and their clavicles. And that was considered a model. And so women had a problem with this. They said, that doesn't look healthy. And so what have we done? We didn't course correct and say this is healthy. We went 180 degrees to the opposite direction in a couple of decades. We said, here we go from showing your clavicle and your chest bones and looking like you should be on a life support system for not eating. And now we're going to show people who are close to being 100 pounds overweight. And so it's just not smart. And if we look at, Will, in music culture, right, in hip-hop culture, what we see is the prevalence now is we see it's okay to be big and sexy, and that's fine. But what are we doing? Because here comes that part again. If we're not politically correct now, and we can't be politically correct because now we're back in that situation. You can't say anything, even though we know that people are dying from obesity-related diseases, even though we know that you can have a greater chance of dying from COVID. We still can't say anything, Will? Right.
It's wild. It's wild. I mean, all the stats you were going over with COVID and obesity, I don't know if I've seen that one time on national news, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on. I don't think I've seen it one time, which is astonishing.
Well, what's ironic is that I was getting these stats together. I asked you to be on the show, and just this morning, a friend sends me a thing from Bill Maher. And Bill Maher says, this is the third rail. Nobody's talking about it. And he said some of these stats, and I said, wow, I'm going to be on the show with Will today talking about this. And Bill Maher's like, why are we ignoring this? So finally, we're getting somebody out there with a voice to say these things. But again, if we go back to what our youth, we're saying it's okay to be unhealthy. But what's happening is we're cheating a younger generation out of a quality of life. Because you know what? Heart disease doesn't discriminate. Diabetes isn't sexy. So if we're not going to talk about these things and say popular culture is allowing people to say, hey, it's okay to be this way, it's not a matter of vanity. It's not a matter of body shaming people. It's a matter of freaking life and death. Again, heart disease, diabetes, they don't discriminate. It's not sexy to be confined to a motor scooter in your mid-30s or 40s because you've eaten yourself into immobility. And we've all seen those people. And if you're one of them, look, I'm sorry. I want to help you. Will is here to help you. So if it's you or a loved one that is relegated to one of those scooters and way before your time because you have eaten your way, we're not here to blame you. We're here to blame the rest of the world for not looking at this. And then you do have to take some self-accountability. I have people in my own family. Well, I just got bad genes. I got grandma's genes. So that's your excuse. You're going to blame it on grandma. Yeah, I can see we didn't get the best genes, but you still have willpower. Like they said in the movie Food Matters. This was in 2008. I think his name was David Wolf. He goes, it takes the same amount of energy to put something good into your mouth as to something bad. It's a simple choice. So Will, from a perspective of you are what you eat, food can change your mood too. And then everything that you've ever done to yourself, the choices that you've made are the outcome of what you've chosen. Now we can start to heal though. So what are some really good things, like your top 3 things that you would say in general to help people start to battle this obesity epidemic?
Yep. So that's a very, very good question. And one of our primary teachings is around 3 principles, but I'm going to go 4 here. And if you can believe and buy into this, you will drastically change your life. Number 1, the biggest problem we have is portion control. And everybody knows that on a surface layer. Everybody gets it, but you got to understand the context behind it. The majority of processed foods, now I'm going to say that again, processed foods and restaurant foods are extremely calorically dense. And the reason being is because shelf life and taste and convenience. You can pack, just to give you guys an example, next time you go into a convenience store, grab a jumbo or large or whatever Snickers. Look at the amount of calories on that Snickers. Now, I want you to remember, there is 90 calories in an apple. 90. So, if you held a Snickers in one hand and the equivalent amount of calories from that Snickers in apples in your other hand, it would be like 4 apples. It would take, I don't even know a person that would sit down and consume 4 apples in a row. You can consume that Snickers bar on your way out of the convenience store before you even get into your car. That is a problem. So portion control is number 1. So being aware, one of the easiest things you can do without tracking anything or counting the calories or doing all the things, start cutting everything in half. And here's why you won't starve, because I know that's the first place your brain goes. Here's why you won't starve. Your body has a hormone, 2 hormones, as a matter of fact. One hormone tells you when you're full. One hormone tells you when you're hungry. Your body's a beautiful thing. It's magical. It tells you when it's full. In order for it to do that, it has to secrete the hormone in your gut. Those hormones understand the density of the food, and then they signal to your brain that you're full. We live in a culture and a society where we distract ourselves as and when we eat. That causes a miscommunication with that hormone. It's why you've heard the term mindlessly eating, because you've disconnected the relationship with that hormone and your brain. So the hormone never tells your brain to stop. Your body knows you're full, but your brain keeps going.
Yeah.
So if you were to cut your portions in half and give yourself a little bit of time, the first resistance would be, I didn't get all the food that I deserved in this setting. And then the outcome would be, I actually feel full. I actually feel full, because the hormones actually go to your head and say, hey, that was a good amount of calories. You're good. So number 1, cut your stuff in half. Number 2, and then I'll let David
Okay.
Segue here. Number 2, inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of all disease. Inflammation is the root cause of diabetes, autoimmune issues, heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, everything. Chronic inflammation at the gut is what causes you to lose your health and to gain weight. It will cause excessive weight gain as well. There's all the studies that linked. I just saw doctors posting about it recently, how inflammation in the cell is directly correlated to excessive weight gain. So what you can do, guess what? Not rocket science. Eat anti-inflammatory foods. You can find those online. They're also full of fiber, which is going to help stimulate your metabolism. It's going to keep you fuller longer. You're going to eat less amount of calories, and you're going to have more energy to move. The more you move, the better your metabolism is, and the better homeostasis your body will be in. That's easy. Those are easy things. They're just not talked about.
And I can't agree with you more. So let me back that up. So Charlotte Gershon, she was an educator and a big believer in everything that Will's talking about. She has a quote that says, all chronic and degenerative diseases are caused by two and only two major problems: toxicity and deficiency. So we either have a deficiency of something or things are toxic. When we talk about hormones and we talk about the things in our bodies that cause toxicity, think about this. The FDA approved what's called partially hydrogenated oil. And these are liquid oils and chemicals that are added to foods to make them solid at room temperature. And they are packed in baked goods and grocery stores. They're used, like Will says, in foods and restaurants. And these oils create the dreaded trans fats that are so incredibly terrible for our bodies. And everybody, well, the FDA approved it though. Okay. What about if we have, what about this? RBGH, which stands for recombinant bovine growth hormone. This is given to cows to increase their milk production. And according to the American Cancer Society, this hormone has the potential to increase the risk of cancer in humans. The FDA approved it in 1993, even though it's banned in the European Union, Canada, and other countries. What we're seeing, inflammation, like he says, toxicity, hormones, portion control. Will, I remember when I had friends come over from Australia a couple years ago, and they're very normal bodies, healthy people, mid-30s, very normal weights. And they said one thing that I'll never forget. They're like, we've been splitting appetizers here in your country. They're like, what's up with the portions? How do people eat these things? And so what, and guys, I'm going to go somewhere else. This is biblical. You know, there's plenty of places in the Bible where it speaks about stewarding your body. In Deuteronomy specifically, it says, curses for disobedience, meaning if you follow these laws that God's given us, this is the blessings. If you don't follow them, it specifically mentions disease, fever, and inflammation. I found that amazing that Deuteronomy, written in the Old Testament, included inflammation. And so what we're seeing is a calorically skewered, Will. And then we go back to children. I'll let you finish with this, but how many times, Will, have you been in Starbucks and seen young kids in there? 10, 11, 13, right? With these big drinks. Like, let's talk about the mocha frappuccino, right? So I'm like, okay, mocha frappuccino. First of all, if it's got caffeine in it, I mean, did you need caffeine at 13, Will? I mean, I was bouncing off the walls at 13. I didn't even know what caffeine was. God knows what I would look like. But a mocha frappuccino, 370 calories, 140 calories from fat, 51 sugars, and 100 milligrams of caffeine. Now, you tell me what kid, 11, 12, 13, 14, even 16, needs that. But
so, go ahead.
No, you go. That's my question.
So, I'm going to segue a little bit. And David brought up something earlier about, would you give kids cigarettes? And our natural thing is absolutely not. That is absolutely absurd. Okay. Now I want you to think about what David just described. in that Frappuccino, okay? You got processed sugar, you got chemicals, and you have caffeine. Processed sugar and caffeine are listed as addictive substances. Processed sugar, study after study after study after study, through chemical changes in the brain, have shown to be more addictive than caffeine. And we all know, because a lot of us are coffee drinkers, we know how addicting caffeine is. Processed sugar has been compared to cocaine as an addictive substance. That is how addicting. And those of you who have a sugar addiction know exactly what I'm talking about, because I've had one before too. Now, I want you to think about this. When you buy a pack of cigarettes, or you listen, this happened to me the other day, you listen to a tobacco commercial or see one on TV. The government makes them say, this is on the label, this is an addictive substance and can cause cancer. You cannot smoke these if you are under the age of 18. Tobacco companies cannot market to underage people. They cannot market to kids. Why do I'll use cereal companies as an example. Why are they allowed to place their products at eye height of your children, not you, your children? Those same exact products have so much processed sugar, which is linked to clinically, like study, linked to obesity, linked to diabetes, and linked to high blood pressure, all the negative things. Also linked to cancer, because obesity is linked to cancer. They're all linked. Why are those labels not on the cereal boxes? Why are those labels not on all the foods that contain a certain amount of processed sugar or trans fat? Why are those not there, number one? And number two, this is going to be an eye-opener for some of you guys. Most of these companies, Heinz, Kraft, all these companies, they spend extra money to change their formulation to abide by the governmental rules of other countries like Australia, the UK, Japan, etc. Because when they had obesity epidemic problems, they literally came together and said, okay, why is our nation getting really sick and fat? Because it's costing us a lot of money. To David's point earlier, it's costing us a lot of money. Why is this happening? Okay, let's bring in the experts. Hey, experts, why is this happening? Well, it's the processed sugar. Okay, where's the processed sugar coming from? Well, it's coming from these companies. Okay, so anybody have a solution? Hand raised. Let's do a sugar tax. Just tax them. Okay, well, now the companies don't want to pay that tax, so they will reformulate their products to be sold in those countries. Ask yourself this question. Why won't they reformulate it for us? This is where it comes from. They're already reformulating it for the other countries, yet they still sell us the unhealthiest version. Ask yourself, I don't need to tell you, ask yourself why.
I'm going to take a stab at it. Is it because that's where all the money's made on the backside, right? I mean, the medicines, the pharmaceutical industry, everything is made on people being unhealthy. They're relying upon us to make more money. So we're under some type of psychological warfare. And look, I know what's happening now. There's right now during COVID, guys, I'm with you. There's a lot of emotional eating. When you are home and you're not going out, there's emotional eating going on. If you're depressed about the way the world's going, there's emotional eating going on. Okay? We're getting ready to go into a winter season where it gets darker out earlier. There's emotional eating going on at night. So from a Christian perspective, here's something. I came across the girl's blog. Her name was Erica Grant. And I love this because she says, we don't need to supersize everything. And a regular portion is enough for most people. But what's happening is we are being advertised to, like I said, whether it is young men being targeted by fast food restaurants, whether it is Target saying it's okay to be overweight and still be loved, or whether it's a musical culture that says, hey, big is sexy, that's okay. But when it's going to impact your quality of life, that's what we're not telling these young kids, and we're robbing them. And so from a Christian perspective, if we look at 1 Corinthians, it says, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit you've received from God? These are not your own, but bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. I mean, it couldn't be any more clear. And there was a girl who responded to that, and I love what she says, because this is exactly why we're here today. We're here to shine a light, put away the political correctness for a second so we can save lives. And this girl, Kaylee, responded that. She goes, this was a great article. I think that sometimes we as Christians use being a Christian as an excuse not to take care of our bodies. As in, look, God loves us no matter how we look, and we're above judging people by their physical appearance, so it doesn't matter how we look. And she goes, while this is true, it doesn't give us a free pass to do whatever we want. As stated, not taking care of your physical body really does have an impact on our mental and spiritual well-being. We have come to a spot in our culture where we are not allowed to say it's not healthy. It's not just that it doesn't look good. Okay, everybody has their degree. Some people think big is beautiful. That's fine. What we're saying is, I don't care about any of that stuff. You will die younger. You will have more serious health complications. You will be a greater financial burden to both your family and the rest of the world that pays taxes because you have made these choices. There's a certain amount of personal responsibility that everybody has to take. Push away from the table. Okay? But there's another thing, like Will just talked about. It's a psychological warfare. They're advertising, they're targeting, and they're making money on the back end, too, of this health industry because they know that $500 billion that's coming up in obesity-related medical costs is going to put money in a lot of people's pockets, and that's sad.
So, David, really quick, I want to touch on, because this has to do with sports, too. Something that bothers me a lot with this psychological warfare is I just saw Steph Curry, who just signed the largest contract in basketball right now, doing a commercial for Subway. Subway just got in trouble twice. First, for the bread, for having plastic in the bread, and two, for having no tuna in the tuna. There's no tuna in the tuna at Subway. Yet, we have Steph Curry, one of the arguably top 3, probably top 10 celebrity athletes in the United States, pushing Subway. I don't even think they got in trouble for any of that. That, number one, is mind-blowing. Number two, before I forget, guys, David touched on some biblical stuff. And he talked about inflammation, them talking about inflammation in the Bible. I don't need to go back in time to help you guys understand this, okay? Back then, biblical times, what did they have access to? The only food sources that they had access to were foods that came from the earth, okay? Now, I want you to understand something. Almost all food that comes from the earth is anti-inflammatory. So, if you believe in God and that God created earth, all the food from earth that grows from the planet coincidentally is not only anti-inflammatory, but extremely nutritionally dense. And not only that, this goes as far back to, you guys want to talk a little bit of science? The electricity, they call it grounding, that the earth gives off, that you can transmit through your feet. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. Look up grounding. It is a thing. Do you know what that electricity does when it comes up and through your feet? Here we go, drum roll. It reduces body inflammation. So you go back biblical, and they're talking about inflammation because they knew that foods from the earth, the things they're accessible to, the ground itself, Mother Earth herself, is anti-inflammatory. Do you notice all the things that cause inflammation were made by man? Almost all of them. All pharmaceuticals, all processed foods, processed sugars. We manipulated corn. We literally manipulated corn. We manipulated dairy. We manipulated everything. And everything that we touched turned inflammatory. Everything from the earth is anti-inflammatory. If that doesn't kick off a light bulb for you, you got some issues. Like, we need to talk.
Yeah, amen. You know, in the beginning, God put his people in a what? God put his people in a garden, a land.
Right.
I mean, there's a little hint there, to dwell with him and to enjoy his presence. And God said, let the earth, what? Sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit. 2 Timothy says it's the hardworking farmer, right? If we look at Philippians, their destiny is destruction. Their God is in their what? Their God is in their stomach. Guys, we know it. The 7 deadly sins, 2 of them, sloth and gluttony, okay? Sloth and gluttony. What's going on right now? Again, we're going to split the blame. Part of this, there has to be self-responsibility. I don't want to hear I have bad genes. I don't want to hear that I can't help it. But I also don't want to hear that, hey, it's not just their fault, because we are seeing the targeting of our youth. And that's where it starts, with good habits. And now with COVID, what we're seeing is sloth and gluttony. What is sloth? A habitual disinclination to exert yourself. It's basically laziness. Play more video games. Sit home. Sit on the couch. Don't go out. You're quarantined. You can't go outside. Hey, exercising inside is one thing, but we need to be outside. Our kids need to be outside. Gluttony, habitual greed or excess in eating, excessive desire for food. I mean, if we can't see this, and at some point, call it out. Look, I brought Will on here because Will was a heavy kid. Not only, not that way, but Will has that perspective, but he's also extremely knowledgeable. His whole life is devoted to helping people eat intuitively real food and reduce inflammation. Myself, for the first time, I'm the exact opposite. I couldn't gain a pound as an adolescent. I was on the 90-pound football team when all my friends in 8th grade were on the 140-pound team. Think about that, 90 pounds in 8th grade. That's tiny. But now I'm 210 pounds when I should be about 195. So for the first time in my life, I'm battling weight. For the first time in my life, I'm looking down going, oh my gosh, how am I going to do something about this? And I have young children. And I, not only for myself, but anybody right now, if you're overweight and you want to be a parent, guess what? There'll be a really, really eye-opening time when you have those kids and you can't do anything with them. Because kids take a lot of energy and they want to run and they want to play and they want you to lift them up. And if you're an adolescent right now or a young adult and you think that it's okay, it's going to have ramifications. You're going to have a life where there's going to be limitations on you. Will, I just remembered this. When we were at Dollywood, we're next in line to get on a roller coaster. A girl in front of us had to wave her hand and have the person come over because the seatbelt didn't fit her. And they couldn't do nothing. And then she had to walk away. And my heart sank. My heart sank, and I thought to myself, that has to be a really tough emotional time. Because it's not just you coming to the realization that you just waited in line an hour. You waited in line an hour to find out that the seatbelt wouldn't contain you. But not only that, but you have to walk away in front of hundreds of other people who all know what just happened. And so that's traumatic, my friends. It's traumatic. I have people in my own family who the doctor said, if you don't lose 20 or 30 pounds, you're going to have a knee replacement. And guess what? The knees gave out. So as we wrap up here in the last 10 minutes, I think you can see that Will and I are passionate about this. And as I said in the beginning, we don't want to point fingers. But like that girl who had to walk away from the roller coaster, or like the kids who are being fed right now, even by the own school system, or even by their parents who don't know any better, or perhaps they do and they just don't care. I'll say it again, 100% your quality of life, the things that will be available to you, won't be there if you continue on this path. And it's going to affect the rest of us because we have to pay for the healthcare system. And no one's doing anything about it. Thank God Bill Maher said something. Will, you work with people every single day. When we talk about emotional eating, when we talk about just not having the knowledge to know these things, I'm like, man, I wish someone would have told me that. What do you think is the first and easiest thing that we need to do as a culture? Is it education?
It's absolutely along the lines of education. If you're a parent and you haven't been touched by the statistics that we've been talking about with children, you have something wrong with you. But two, self-accountability and lead by example. You got to understand, our kids, they're the next generation of leaders. They are. And when you're constantly setting them up for failure, and I'm not just talking weight here, do the research yourself. Look at what processed sugar does to the learning capacity. Look at ADHD in kids. Look at its link and correlation to processed sugar and fast foods and candies. Legitimately the only thing that they have options for inside of the school system. All of it has been linked to decreasing cognition, decreasing the ability to focus on something, and decreasing your learning capacity. So not only are we setting them up for failure physically, we're setting them up for failure mentally. And these kids are the next generations. This is the next generation of leadership. They will be running the country. They will be running companies. They will be in positions of responsibility. We cannot be setting them up for failure at a young age. It is not their job to do the research. It is not their job to go grocery shopping. It is your job. So what you can do is lead by example. Learn to take care of yourself. And the only way, and this is why, guys, diets don't work. This is why diets don't work. And this is why the culture will continue to get worse if we continue to just hop on a diet. Because a diet is a set of rules and restrictions that you follow for a short period of time. Usually to lose 5 pounds, 10 pounds, fit into your bikini, whatever the case may be. That does not provide you education. If you do not have education, how will you influence the people around you and your kids and the children around you? You can't. It's impossible. The only way to influence people is through education. People who are not educated are controlled. They are controlled. Hence, the bigger picture of trying to get people controlled. What is the best way to get a mass amount of people controlled? Suppress them, remove education, make them fat, and make them sick. That is a way to control through fear. Education on nutrition is the answer. Educate yourself, like we talked about. We literally went biblical. Like, eat anti-inflammatory foods, watch your portions, move more. I will say one thing about me growing up. I would have been one of those kids that was obese, had diabetes, the whole nine. What saved me through that time wasn't my own willpower to get out. It was I moved. When I was a kid, we played outside. We got dirty. We were exposed to viruses. We were in the cold. We were running. We were riding bikes. We were skateboarding. They don't do that anymore. The movement saved me. Being active saved me. If I would have had the environment that they have today, sitting on average 7 to 9 hours behind the screen with lifestyle that I had, I'd have no chance. I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing, learning what I'm learning, and educating people the way that I am. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have had the mental capacity. I was already in the lowest education district in the United States is New Mexico. I was already in that. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. The movement saved me. So if that doesn't ring a bell for you guys, get your kids off the screens, monitor it, get them outside, get them exposed to sun, get them moving, and get yourself doing the same exact thing, and you will start to impact the generations after you. It will be a domino effect. It's only going to work. The only way we will beat these giants, big food, big pharma, the only way is we have to educate ourselves and impact the next generation. It is the only way that we will win that battle.
Amen. And you know what, Will? That is a great way to take us out. But I want to, if you can say it in a way that you want, this has been more than a battle of will for you, no pun intended. You're facing some tyrannical forces in your education, aren't you? In your company.
Oh, yeah. I'm constantly being suppressed. Facebook has refused to unlock our ability to make money on Facebook. They've permanently locked us down for over a year. They're suppressing content. They're suppressing lives. They're doing a lot to not allow us to spread our message, which isn't even, it's not political. It's not anti or pro anything. It's just pro health. That's all it is. It's just pro health. I mean, you could go back as far as you want, but we're dealing with a lot. We're dealing with a lot of pushback right now, but we will definitely get through it.
It's amazing to me that someone who wants to push natural foods and wants to get people healthy is literally having to jump through hoops and is being suppressed. When you said you said you've been kicked off and why do you think that is?
You know, I'll tell you guys a short. This would be an interesting, entertaining story. So our business, it's called the Business Manager on Facebook. That's how your ability to get your content out and let people know who you are and what you do. They've permanently disabled our account for over a year. They've had me submit over 7 legal documents. And this is when I called, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but this is when I called Bull S, was the last document they asked me to submit. They told me that they didn't believe I was a legitimate business. They wanted my article of incorporation. They wanted proof of an EIN number. I gave them all of that. Then they said, we still don't believe that you're a legitimate business. So we want a legal document that has your LLC and your phone number on it. So I said, okay, that doesn't seem like a big ask, until I realized there are no legal documents with your phone number on it. That's to protect you. That's the whole point. So then I had to go through I realized that was a move they played because they know that people don't have access to a document like that. It doesn't exist. Look at your bank statement. Is your phone number on there? Nope. Look at your legal documents. Your phone number on there? Nope. Look at your tax documents. Your phone number on there? Nope. They wouldn't even allow it in 2 separate. It needed to be on the same exact legal document. I found one. I submitted. We haven't heard from them in 4 weeks. They said it would take 48 hours. There's nobody for us to talk to. There's nobody for us to get back at. Nothing. It's unreal. And then after I did a short live the other day, said nothing about my company, did not sell anything. I talked about how the immune system is correlated to the gut and how flu season is coming. And here's what you guys can be doing with food to protect your own immune system, no matter what you believe in, no matter what you believe in. They immediately flagged my live. They sent me a notification that said I'm violating their health and wellness policies and that I'm attempting to sell something. Ugh. I don't have anything to sell. So it's insanity. But those are some of the things I'm dealing with on my end.
Well, God bless you, man. We're fighting an uphill battle. We're fighting forces that want to keep people desperate. They want to keep people at home. They want to keep people overweight so they can control them. I think you said it. And you can be found, it's Nourish, NRSH, right? Spell it for me.
NRISH, nourish.com.
NRISH, nourish.com. NRISH. Will Armillo is our guest today. We could go for another 2 or 3 hours, but you guys disseminate this information. Let people know. If you know somebody, especially a young person who looks like they're on that path to severe obesity, we got to love on them. We got to love on them. We got to let them know that, hey, we're cheating a generation out of a quality of life that they deserve. So let's take more responsibility. God bless Will Armillo for coming on today and giving us his expert knowledge. And guys, get turned on.